Chris Barr has over 26 years of experience in both television and radio journalism. We spoke to her about ways we communicate, in particular her perspective on ethical codes and the changing nature of journalism. This is what she had to say.
In terms of being a successful journalist, what does communication mean to you?
Communication to me means a whole range of things, and it will surprise you that you don't always have to speak to communicate. Sometimes the most powerful communication, I know in some of our Sunday night stories, has been when there's silence. It's changed over the years, to be really honest. I mean, in radio, communication was about being concise and telling a story in 30 seconds. In television, it's a vastly different proposition. In news, it's usually telling a story in about a minute 20, which is still being fairly concise. But in television, communication isn't just verbal, it's about pictures as well. And the great thing about television is pictures can be incredibly powerful, and sometimes you don't need words. Morally, I suppose a lot of the time I've had problems with people beating stories up, with people not being ethical and presenting the facts in a story, and I think it's a personal decision that you make as a journalist, how far you're willing to push the truth. And I think it's a Faustian pact to make. I think it's a really dangerous thing to do, because the minute you start going down that road, you become a less believable communicator and a less believable journalist. So we're often hamstrung by the law about the way in which we can report a story, who we can identify in a story. You know, often journalists will know an awful lot more than what they can say, and that's largely due to the law. But that's a constraint, but I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing. I don't think we could have a bunch of feral journalists running around, you know, defaming people or sharing their view of the world just because they thought they were right. So I think those sorts of constraints are really necessary.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that you need to do most as a journalist, if I had to give anybody a tip on what you need to do to be successful as a journalist, listen.
Exactly.
That's all you have to do. In the last 4 years, the media market has become so fractured. It's unbelievable, because the interest in the internet has grown. We have a whole lot more new free-to-air digital channels. People are sourcing their news differently. It's a really exciting, dynamic, evolving market, but it's meant the free-to-air television stations, like the station that I work for, have really had to adapt. I think sourcing news, though, from Facebook and Twitter is fraught with danger unless you know it's a reliable source, and that's what you need to do. Like, wherever you get your news from, you need to know that it's a reliable source. Otherwise, you're in strife, in a lot of strife. If you're running a story about somebody that's negative, you always have to ring the person for the other side of it. I think it's criminal not to do that. So a good journalist will give you both sides of the story. A good journalist will give you a balanced story. Without both sides of the story, it's not a good story. Yeah, I really feel quite strongly about the media bashing that goes on. You know, if we shut down the media, if we don't have the media reporting what's going on in the world, how on earth do people find out about it? You know, we're there because we have a society that embraces freedom of the press. We have a society here that embraces freedom of information. And if we start kiboshing that, and if we start restricting that too much, we're all stuffed. Yeah, that's eloquent, isn't it?
So where do you see communications in the field of journalism? Where do you see that going in the future?
Well, growth in social media, rumour and innuendo, which I think is really bad, because social media often is not based in fact, and it scares me. It scares me how often people will use social media as a primary source. And I would hate to see us go down the track of rumour and innuendo, and people not checking their facts, and people not taught to be journalists who dot the I's and cross the T's and rely on unreliable sources for information. So, you know, I think social media can be a really powerful tool. I think it can be a really dangerous tool as well. So I don't think traditional journalism will die any sort of death anytime soon, because respect for the facts remains out there, you know, in the community, and people want to know the truth. They don't want to know rumour and innuendo. I think that's a choice, and that's a decision that you make as a journalist. How ethical do you want to be? It's your decision, and only you can make it.